Well, the first time I met this Clavioline, which I think is the only one I've met, it's designed to be freestanding on a metal stand underneath, and this bit just tucks underneath the right-hand side of the keyboard. So you're playing the keyboard and then just underneath, or playing the piano and just underneath, you have this, and your right knee would operate the volume control by just moving your knee across like that, and that would just increase the volume or decrease it. And as you can see here, the pitch, this is the very bass, and then there are two that moves an octave. Each movement moves everything up an octave, and so the high parts on Telstar and Knight of the Vampire were obviously on the right range, and then the low parts, the more gutsy sounding parts, like a bass organ, were on the left part. And here, with the different so-called instruments you could replicate from pushing these buttons and vibrato and all sorts of other little gadgets that most of them didn't work particularly, but you could certainly change the sounds from a delicate, fine, moon-dusty sound to a very raucous sound, and various sounds in between. None of which sounded particularly authentic, because if you look at the list of the instruments it's supposed to be able to play, I think you'd need a good imagination to actually be successful with that. And of course you could only play one note at a time, so if you played anything below that it would be silent, or anything above that it would play the higher number, a higher note, but it would only play one note at a time. Anyone who's seen the Moontrekkers live might wonder why I have to go through this performance of tuning. There's a tuning button here, there's one on each end. But I have to retune it because the bass, the aggressive bass sound in Knight of the Vampire, obviously Joe Meek's piano was a semitone out of tune, so that the written key and the key that the other musicians in the group played with let me use this as the lowest note. But of course, when we play at live gigs, I have to retune this so that I can still use this as the lowest note. Otherwise, if I play it in the written key, it would need a note here, and I'd lose it. So I have to go through this performance every time, because it's easier to retune this than to ask all the stringed instruments to retune their instruments accordingly. Well, 3, 4, 6 and A was the Knight of the Vampire, and 4, 7, 9 and the naught were the sound for Telstar. And then you can have different grades of vibrato, and pizzicato, and I can't remember what the B and the V. I've got the little book of words, well, the little sheet of words, but as I say, you can get quite a large number of different sounds from it, pressing these various different buttons. It was an amplifier and a speaker, and it made up, if you can imagine, the other part of a rectangular box, and you just plug that into the back, and that would be the speaker and amplifier. But of course, as years went by, I had it then rejigged so that I could put it through a main amplifier and then to get some decent volume. But you just pack it away like the musicians who used to play in the pubs would just plonk it into the box, which is the amplifier speaker, and it was like a little suitcase, and off they went. So instead of a double bass or a violin, they've got their little Clavioline. The Clavioline is a unique instrument, and most of the modern equipment, I don't think, gives the perfect sound of a Clavioline. And when you think of musicians and music, in all the years that the music has been going, you might hear of Jimi Hendrix guitars, or you might hear of somebody else's instruments that are very famous, but this is the actual instrument that made Telstar, and what it's worth would be, I don't know, but certainly as a collector's item, I'm not going to part with it. But it's quite to think that massive sound comes from a little thing like this is really interesting.